Hey, this is Joe Miller with How to Beat the Banks, and today's subject is something that is dire to any real estate transaction. I'm talking about title insurance or title fees. Why do we need title company or settlement companies? And who better to talk to than a pro in the business, Sarah Pickerill with First International Title. I got her with me today as my featured guest. You can reach Sarah with First International Title at 772-233 4950. That's 772-233-4950. How you doing today, Sarah?
Doing great. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. Well, first of all, I'm just going to ask you, how did you get into doing title? What got you into real estate title?
Well, that's a good question. I did some real estate, a little bit referrals, that type of thing, and I was going to community college, and I saw a class for becoming a title agent, and I thought that sounded interesting, something I could do, and I took the class, and I really enjoyed it, and I passed the test, obviously, and became a licensed title agent and got in the business.
Well, I guess that's one way to do it. If there was another flyer there that day, like, I don't know, um, LPN, would you have done that?
No, no, definitely not.
Are you scared of drawing blood?
Yeah, not too fond of needles, no.
She went the pencil paper out instead. Okay, I got
Yes,
you.
I did. Yeah.
So what does title company, like, what does First International do? I know you do real estate transactions. What's kind
Yeah.
of the process of title, and what do you guys really? What's your major function when it comes to real estate?
Okay, well, we do actual real estate closings, like you said. Basically, we do residential, commercial, many different kinds. But basically, we get a contract for the sale of property, and we kind of take it from there as far as the settlement goes or the closing process. We search the public records, we examine the title, make sure that everything is clear, no liens on it. We get all the paperwork together and all the money, and make
Ooh,
sure
the
that
money.
the money, the important part. And then we have what's called the settlement or closing. And, we have happy buyers and happy sellers.
So you're like the liaison that kind of coordinates the whole process. And on
Mhm.
top of that, you're kind of doing searches, you're looking at liens and deeds and titles and kind of making sure everything's in place for the next person who's either buying or selling the property. So you're kind of a facilitator, but you also probably are the most important asset because you're the one that kind of controls the money part of it. You make sure loans get paid off if someone's selling, you make sure their previous mortgage gets paid, and you make sure you get the wire from the buyer's bank. So that's a big part of what you do too.
Yes, it is.
So lots of account numbers.
Lots of account numbers. Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever get worried you're gonna like type in the wrong number?
We have double checks.
Oh, okay.
We have double checks. Definitely. We don't, yes, we do worry about that. That's one of the most important things we do. We want to make sure that the wires are done correctly. So we have more than one person looking at the same numbers. So one
Gotcha.
person will put it in, another person will check and make sure that the numbers have been put in correctly and make sure that they match what's on the software and what's on the actual closing statement itself.
So you make sure that things are gonna go through. It's not gonna end up in like Timbuktu or something.
Exactly. And we have to verify all wiring instructions. We have to call to verify. So we have a whole process for that. And,
Okay.
we can't just email them and just take whatever wire. We have to go through and double check those as well.
Oh, that makes sense. So a lot of questions that we get on the mortgage side, it has to do with, what are these fees? I know that people have settlement disclosures when they're buying or selling a property, and they have closing disclosures. There's a ton of fees on there. It can be, if you don't buy properties a lot, it can kind of look like Morse code. So just kind of wanted to go through those with you. I know that most of
Mhm.
the fees for title are in section C and section H on the closing disclosure. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Mhm.
What would you say are like, when dealing with title, what are some of the most common fees that people will run into?
Okay, so if you're looking in section C, you're going to see the lender's title policy and lender's title policy endorsements.
Okay.
You'll also see the settlement fee and possibly a search fee, depending on who's paying for title on the owner's title, that's seller or buyer. Sometimes you'll see survey charge in the C section as well.
Okay, so lender's title, let's talk about that because I see that a lot when people, because 70% of people I would say use a mortgage or a home loan to buy a home because none of us have, 4 to 5 to 600,000 just sitting in our sock drawer. I wish I did, but so they need a mortgage, and we see this thing called lender's title coverage on the settlement disclosure. What exactly is that?
Okay, so that protects the lender from any title defects. So if
Okay,
there's a problem with the title, it
defect.
will, yes, defects or claims as they were called, and that would protect the lender.
All right, let's talk about defects for a minute. So tell me the craziest story you've ever run into where you were like, "Oh, this is going to be an easy situation." Then you look into the title and you're like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And like tell me a situation where there's been just tons of liens or tons of defects.
Well, that's a, oh gosh, I don't know. Let's see. There's lots of different types of things, but a lot of common ones are a lot of times people don't realize that they had a line of credit open from a long time ago. They think that that's been
Oh,
cleared
like
up and
a
it
like a
hasn't,
HELOC or something?
like a HELOC, exactly. And it could be something where it could have been like two or three folks back as far as sellers go,
Hmm.
and they just never closed that out. And then the bank has gone out of business.
Oh
And
gosh.
yeah,
How do you even deal with that? You just call the bank and it's
um,
like, "Boo doo doo. Sorry, there is
yeah,
no one here to
yeah.
take your
So
call."
there's no one here, exactly. So that takes some time to get that straightened out. Hopefully, on things like that. A lot of times on things like that, there's no funds that are due the mortgage company.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are funds that are due the mortgage company, so that can be a sticky situation. We have to get that all cleared up.
So what do you just well, hopefully that previous bank was bought by another bank and you can get a
Usually,
hold of
yeah.
them. But in
That's
weird situation, let's just say we had Billy Bob's Bank and Trust and Cletus didn't balance the books one year and they just went out of business and couldn't get a hold of anybody. What would you do? Do you just reach out to do you have to do a like go to do a hearing or how does that work?
Well,
You have to
you
go to
could do
court?
yeah. I mean, the worst case would be you have to go to do a quiet title action, but hopefully, if they have a prior title policy, there's some things that can be taken care of there. Sometimes you have a situation where you've had a lot of heirs, and not all of them signed off properly on a deed, so you have to try and find somebody from 10 years ago who was supposedly an heir on a title. So there could be a lot of different ways of going about fixing it, but that's what we have to do to clear title and make sure that everything's clear at the closing table.
So what other kind of errors do you see a lot of? Or do you see a lot of like unpaid tax? You know what I thought of? What about HOAs? Do you ever see a lot of unpaid HOA dues?
Well, the thing with HOA dues is once they get to a certain point, the HOA itself can start foreclosure process.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
That would
so
suck to lose your property over because you couldn't use the
yeah,
tennis court. You're like, I'm not paying that, and then
yeah,
you lose
you
your whole
know,
house over owing some HOAs. That would really
that
not
would
be
be
good.
terrible. Yeah, so they have to be, but a lot of times that'll go into collections. So that takes, you have to go contact the attorney and get a collection letter. Of course, all those cost money, and then all that takes time. But we have to get all that, so we make sure that everything has been cleared off and taken care of at closing. So
So
the buyer
yeah.
isn't going to step into like special assessments that weren't paid, or just past dues that were not paid.
I wonder if you don't pay your HOAs, can you still go in and check your mail? You know how you have a key fob, check your mailbox? I wonder if they like just lock the door on
Get
you and
disconnected.
cut your
I
fob
don't
out.
know.
That would be. I
Probably they
found
probably won't let you go to the pool anymore.
I found out I owed HOAs like a couple months ago. Ours is due quarterly, and
Hmm.
somehow we had missed one quarter and didn't even know about it. No one ever said anything either. And we went to pay. You can log online actually to pay your HOA dues, and we log online and it's like double the normal amount. We're like, "What is this?" Like freaking out. Did they raise our bill? And then we call them, and they're like, "No, you owe us." I'm like, "Oh." And I'm like, "Well, you did." I was so excited though because they didn't kick me out of the neighborhood pool. So
That's nice.
because it's I think it's even more difficult because you don't pay it every month, so it's just kind of like, and they don't really send you a bill. You usually get like a payment booklet. So if you usually do everything auto pay online, and all of a sudden that comes due, it's like so. To rectify that, for anyone else out there that has HOA concerns from the HOA mafia, I like to call them, just put it in your Outlook calendar or on your iPhone calendar, and just whenever it pops up, just go ahead and send a check in. It's the easiest way to deal with that. So
Yeah.
the
So what
lender
you do?
the,
Yeah.
the
Go
lender
ahead.
title that protects basically the banks, right? And it keeps in case
Mhm.
there's some kind of title error later on after you close, it comes back and kind of gives you some attorney help to fight those things and get things removed to the lender, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then you have owner's title. Now this is confusing because you see title insurance policy. Whenever you do a mortgage, people see 1,000 different types of insurance. They got homeowners. Sometimes they have mortgage insurance. Then they got title owners insurance, and they got lenders, and then all the insurance. They get confused on what insurance is what. So, what is owner's
Yeah.
title insurance?
Okay, so owner's title insurance, it's the same thing as a lender's title insurance, except that it protects the borrower, the new owner of the property. So that is and it's good for the entire time you own the property. There's only one
Oh, that's
fee.
good.
Yeah, it's not renewable. You don't have to do that any time. So if you have somebody who tries to submit a claim like 5 years after you purchase the property, the underwriter will defend you in court, will defend that claim. And it's really amazing that it lasts for the entire time you own the property.
So basically, the entire time you own the property, you don't have to worry about buying owner's title again. It'll protect you in case it basically protects your equity. So it's really
Right.
important to have it. Why is it important for people to? Because I know owner's title is optional, right? Technically.
It's optional for the lender. The lender tells you that it's optional. You'll
Okay.
see real estate contracts will have owner's title policy in it. So you'll see that there is owner's title policy, and the reason they're saying it's optional is because they don't need it.
So why is
They
it
don't
so?
need
So it's
it. So
important. It's really important for the person buying the home because at the same because you're protected. I mean, we buy warranties on our washer and dryers, our stoves. It's kind of like a blanketed warranty in layman's terms that protects your equity, correct?
right, right for the entire time you own the
And
home.
it's usually, I mean, it's based on the purchase price, but I mean, do you see them? What's the average price of the owner's title? I know it's based off the purchase price of the property, but aren't they usually on average between like $500 to $800?
It depends on the purchase price of the property. So yes, it's like 0.5%, depending on where you are on it, but it's not a huge amount. It's hard to explain sometimes because you have lender's title policy is a simultaneous issue, so you get a discount. It's a discounted amount, and so it's not like you're paying for a lender's policy based on the loan amount and an owner's
Okay,
policy
I
based on the
gotcha.
sales price. You see, you don't add those two
So
together.
you get a
So
discounted lender's rate,
it's
but
exactly.
I gotcha. That makes sense. So let's just say you bought $1 million house. On average, that would be about $5,000 for both, give or take.
Yes, yes,
So if you're spending $1 million, people, you
yeah.
can't take 5,000 to protect your equity and your asset, well, then you might got your priorities in the wrong place. I'm just saying. So we buy Apple Care for
Yeah.
our phones. We buy warranties for our washer and dryers. For $1 million property, $5,000, whatever. I don't. It's peace of mind. So, and this stuff is fairly common, especially since we're in a very high estate property state where people, a lot of homes are passed on and properties are passed from family to family. This stuff does happen, and keep in mind too, mechanic liens can hit later on. So let's say the seller, to get their home listed, had a mechanic or had a contractor come in and repair the gutters. Well, the seller never did pay them. Well, 8 months later, after you bought the home, that contractor decides, hey, I want my money. But however, the old seller doesn't, the old person that owned it, that hired them, it doesn't even own the house. That lien that he puts on the property belongs to you now, right?
If they file the notice of commencement, yes.
Okay. So this insurance goes into effect to protect you for anything that happened before you took possession and ownership of the property, right?
Exactly. And
Okay.
that's what all the work is done, is to clear that up, to make sure that all that's paid. That's what we do. So you don't, but if it's something doesn't, if we miss something, or if something was, I wouldn't say hidden, but not obvious, that's what your title insurance policy comes in to protect you.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break just to catch our breath for a minute. You're on with How to Beat the Banks. I'm Joe Miller, your local mortgage expert, and we have Sarah Pickerill today on here from First International Title. Remember to get a hold of her. Just call 772-233-4950, and we'll be right back. All right, I'm going to bring it back on. All
Okay.
right, welcome back to How to Beat the Banks here on 1490 WWPR. Which I'm Joe Miller, your local mortgage expert. And today on the show, I have our local title expert, Sarah Pickerill from First International Title. She's back with us on this wonderful Saturday morning. Be sure to keep listening to us. But you can get a hold of Sarah if you have any real estate title related questions, or at 772-233-4950. That's 772-233-4950. Or jump on their website. Go to firstintitle, FIRSTINTITLE.com if you want to get more information. Also, if you want a quick answer right now on the show, drop us an email go to howtobeatthebanks.com. Just send us an email. We'd be more than happy to answer. And we can also forward the email even after the show to Sarah, and I'm sure she'd be more than happy to help us. So we've been talking about fees. We went over the two main ones, probably the most costly when it comes to title insurance, owner's title and lender's title. I wanted to ask you, so there's also a thing that we see a lot called settlement fees. What exactly is settlement?
Okay, settlement is the things that we do to get everything ready for closing and for sending all the money, tracking the money coming in, sending all the money out. That's the settlement of the closing itself.
So
Preparing the documents and
that
signing
pays
all
for
of
the
that.
person, that pays for the executive person to help close everybody sign their paperwork and dot their T's, dot their I's and cross their T's. See, that's why I'm not in title. I can't even say it. So,
Yeah,
so
prepare all the title documents for closing, review
and
the loan package, have them sign, make sure all the money's in, make sure all the money goes out. Those are
so,
the things we do.
so it looks like the average settlement fee you told me earlier is about $425. Is that right?
Yes.
So for about 18 hours or more worth of work from an experienced team, I know that Sarah has over 20 years in the business. It's $425, guys. Like, you can't beat it for getting. Not only that, once you're a client of theirs, you can always call with any question you have. You're kind of a client for life. They're there for you to help you whenever something may come up on your property, or if you want to buy another property. It's like having a built-in advisor anytime you're dealing with real estate. So that's one thing I like about First International. They're always there for you. So we got the settlement fee. Now I want to talk about taxes, because that's the thing everyone loves to talk about. I know we don't have state income tax here, but we do have, the state of Florida does kind of make up for that with property taxes. How do they determine property? I know it goes through the property appraisal website, but how do they kind of determine property taxes?
Right. So it is based on the value, what they put the appraised value, the property appraiser appraises the value of the property. It's less than the market value, and to come up with the amount for the property taxes. And they'll have right now they have what's called the trim is out. They'll have like a estimate of what the property taxes will be for this year, and you can go online and check that out. One of the main things that you need to remember is if you're going to be buying a property for your primary residence, you should get homestead exemption. You go to the property appraiser, not to the tax collector, to the property appraiser, and they can and you can apply. And this will help reduce the amount of your property taxes. It caps the increase as how much it can go up every year.
That's why I love Florida, because a lot of states don't have the homestead exemption. And is that typically, from what I've read online, is that typically around, like, if it's your primary, it's around $45,000 reduction, right?
Yes, it can be. Yes.
Okay. So if it's your primary home and you're buying in the state of Florida, now you can't come here and visit 3 times a year and call it your primary home. You can
Mhm.
file through the property appraiser's office, and I think you can do it online in like a couple minutes. And
Yes.
it takes them a couple of weeks, and they'll approve it. And if there's any documents that you didn't upload that they need, they'll actually reach out to you and email you. I've been through this myself. That's how I know. So The documentation too isn't very hard. You usually just have to have your closing disclosure and maybe a deed, but is that right, or is there anything else you think you can need that they would want?
Yeah, that you need to, what you're doing is you're showing that you are living in the property. The deed is recorded in the public records and the property appraiser does pick that up. And it'll show up on the property appraiser's page for your property. But they do need to see like your driver's license with the address on it. Perhaps sometimes they request a
Utility
utility
bill?
bill.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so if you're try to have at least one piece of mail mailed to your primary house, guys, because I know a lot of people are skeptical about mail. Some people do PO boxes. If you could have it just one, just to protect yourself, to show it's your primary. They want a bank statement, preferably, or electric bill or something like that. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to call a property appraiser's office because they're going to know I've moved in and they're going to assess my house. Look, they're going to assess it no matter what you do. They know it's public record. It gets sent to them. So it's better off that you just call and use your resources that you have. Call them, go on their website, and just get these questions answered and get some help, because if anything, it's just going to save you some money. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what kind of differentiates what you guys do at First International Title. Like, how's your process maybe a little bit better than the competition? Why should people want to work with you all?
Well, we're a combination of a small and a big company. So we're a small company in that we have these we have branch offices all throughout the state of Florida in the local communities. And then we're a big company because we have the support of having so many offices, and we have like amazing technology where we can text information. We have a portal where the buyer
Oh
can log
yeah, you were
in,
telling me
put
about
in
that earlier. Tell us about the
yeah.
portal. What does that allow people to do?
So they can go in and they can put in their information securely. So they're not sending it through email. They're going into a portal and securely providing their information that helps us to prepare for closing. Also, after closing, we store their documents and everything there so that they can go back and this year, next year, pull their closing documents, their survey, their owner's title policy, and their deed.
So if you're listening, if you're like me and you lose everything that is given to you, it's great working with First International, because even if you lose maybe your closing disclosure or something pertaining to the property, they're going to have it in this electronic portal for you to get into at any time. And don't worry about forgetting your password. You can reset that, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes, you can.
Once you're out, you're out. No more resetting. No resetting the password. You're done. No, they'll let you reset your password. They keep everything, and they're just super nice people. I mean, I know personally, I've worked with Sarah on several transactions, and she's there even way after office hours to get things done for you. So they really do bend over backwards to help real estate professionals, people, just even people that are just amateur property buyers. They're there every step of the way, and they go above and beyond. They're not kind of like the typical stuffy attorney's office that you call and they close at 3:30 or 4, or they're not open at, everybody's at a lunch outing. They're always there, probably way more than they need to be. So I wanted to thank you for your time, for being on the show. I know this is kind of our first segment. We're going to have a second one with Sarah on here in a few weeks, because it's such a big topic. We're kind of just scratching the surface, and I want to make sure we get everyone's questions answered. Also, if anyone has a question, they heard something today, go ahead and send it to us, and we can definitely address it immediately, or go over it on the next segment with Sarah. So I got Sarah Pickerill with First International Title. They're one of our premier sponsors of How to Beat the Bank show. They do an amazing job. Remember to check out the website at firstentitled.com, or call Sarah directly at 772-233-4950. Thank you so much for coming in, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right.